I'm talking today with Dr. Howard Rodgers, and the subject is suicides. And Howard, a story in the Cullman Times a week ago mentioned the fact that there have been 6 suicides in Cullman County, most of them young men, as opposed to 15 all of last year. So
Right.
it kind of gets your attention.
It does. Half is
6 in 1 month.
almost half as many in 1 month as we had in a year.
Yeah.
The scary thing is, if you annualize that, that's 72 suicides in a
72
year. It's
in a year.
unbelievable.
So from your perspective as a counselor, what's going on today?
I think the root cause may be the fact that kids are being raised differently than they were in years past. This is the first generation that has been raised almost totally by electronic media. Everything they see and do is the result of electronic media. All the interactions they have is on electronic media. And you can control that. You can control the electronic media. You can set the games up to whatever degree of difficulty you want. You can change them. And if you're really good, you can beat the games 99% of the time. I can't, but some people can.
Yeah.
And when you get in real life, it doesn't work that way. And I don't think the young people today are equipped to handle the adversities of life. The only thing they know is LOL and SMH and whatever the initials are that express their feelings, and they don't have to do it in person. They don't have to look at someone eye to eye and solve any kind of difficulties they might have. And that's, I think, the genesis of what's happening in our adolescents and our teenagers. They don't have enough interaction with people in a way that they have to deal with adversity. And when it gets to the point that they don't know what to do, they have read and they have seen and they're following peer groups, so they commit suicide.
The subject of bullying, does that tie right in with it?
That ties
If you're a
in
victim,
with it.
or you
If
perceive
you're
yourself a victim?
a victim of bullying, and there, again, we have changed our perception. When I was growing up, I remember one time a couple of guys got into it, and one was bullying the other, and the coach carried them both to the gym and put them on the mat and put boxing gloves on them, and they settled that right there.
Yeah.
But now, let's give them a ribbon. You know, we'll have a ribbon for people, and we'll have a ribbon for this, and we'll make them feel like, and you create in society a group of victims instead of survivors, and it is a difficult thing to get them past that as they grow older. Everybody wins. That's not life.
Right.
You go to a Little League football game, you have a most valuable player, and then everyone gets a participation trophy. You go to the young beauty pageants, you have a winner and an alternate, and then everybody gets a little tiara because they participated. And we're setting up victims instead of survivors, and as they get bullied, it's a difficult thing for them to handle. They don't know how to handle it. I shared with you a little earlier, it might be something the viewers would be interested in, about the young guy that moved from a real affluent neighborhood in the south part of Birmingham to a smaller school in this area, and immediately they began to pick on him. And he's, leave me alone, don't bother me, leave me alone, don't bother me. And one day he said to them, you need to leave me alone. There are things about me that you don't know. Well, a couple of days later, he demonstrated to them what they didn't know about him because he had it. And as the principal said, it looked like you had Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, and a couple other martial art experts, and said he just left carnage on the sidewalk. The thing they didn't know about him was that he had a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo. He had been taught to survive. And I'm not advocating violence, but I'm saying that as you raise your kids, give them some survival skills, something that they can go back on other than having to take their own life. It is just amazing that we don't teach kids to survive anymore.
How about the parents? Are they generally surprised?
I hear parents say, well, I don't know what happened. And truthfully, they don't, because they don't know their kids. I was reading a newspaper article a couple of weeks ago, and a daycare center had the audacity to put a note on the door, before you come in, please hang your cell phones up, please put away your tablets, your kids have been waiting for you all day. And I thought, that's where we are in society. We're so glued to our telephones, our tablets, our computers, that we lose our kids in all of the, I guess, busyness of life. And when they say, well, we don't know what happened, they really don't. And that's it's really sad that we're not taking more time for our kids. We were sitting around the house a couple of weeks ago, and wife and me and kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, and we just reached over and turned the TV off. It was amazing. We had, before we realized it, about 2.5 to 3 hours of conversation without having interruptions by TV. And I think at some point we've got to get to the point where when families sit down, the parents have got to listen to the kids. And that isn't happening, and kids are running off, and we don't know what is happening to kids. I think before your kids leave the house, you ought to know where they're going. I think when they get there, you ought to know where they are. And I think when they come home, you ought to know where they've been. And if they have a cell phone or a tablet with a list of friends on it, you ought to have a copy of it. You ought to know. Many years ago in Cullman, there was a family whose daughter, beautiful young lady, and she was just as precious as she could be. But she got in with the wrong crowd, and she always came home and she'd hug her mother, and that was the ritual. You got to hug your mother. And one night she just went going into her bedroom, and the mother, oh, this is not like her. So she went up to hug her, and she smelled gasoline. Turned out it was carburetor fluid or starter, and they'd been huffing it. The mother knew every child she was with, and in the middle of the night she started making phone calls, and they identified about 10 people that had a huffing. They would go to AutoZone and they'd buy carburetor fluid. They would spray it in a brown paper bag and they'd huff it. But I thought, if that happened today, the mothers wouldn't know who to call, because they don't know who their friends, the kids' friends are. So the parents need to be more involved in the life, and they don't need to be able to say, well, I don't really know what happened. You need to have a handle on what's going on. If they're making bad grades, you need to know it. If they're having boyfriend-girlfriend problems, you need to know it. Whatever their difficulties are, you need to know it before they commit suicide, not after.
And I wonder also, with drugs, how do you know if it was suicide or an accident unless they leave a note or something like that?
You really don't. And the difficulty we're having with drugs now is they're poison. Not only are the drugs in and of themselves poison, but they're trying to make them faster, they're trying to make them stronger. And many years ago, one of the greatest basketball players that probably ever played, Len Bias, was celebrating his contract, and he took one hit of a drug and it killed him because he had a heart problem. If you have prevailing health problems and you do drugs, the outcome is not going to be good. So it's unless they leave a note, you really don't, unless you look at the amount. If you can get a good tox screen on them and determine the amount of drugs in their body, then you can look at it whether it was a normal usage, if there is such a thing, or whether it was an amount that was just there to kill them. But drugs is a problem, and even though the drugs may not have killed them, it may have influenced their thinking in a manner that caused them to do the act.
Let's talk a little bit about getting help, whether it be somebody dealing with a problem, whether it's parents, whatever. Obviously, they can contact you.
Yes.
How would they do so, and who else should they talk to?
There's a network. There's a suicide hotline you can call. It's 1-800 number. I don't know what it is right off the top of my head. I'll get it to you, and you might could run it other times. You can call my office, 256-962-6296. I and most medical professionals now, if you say I'm going to kill myself, they're going to treat it seriously. Your family physician is a really good place to start. I know if you walk into their office and say, I'm going to kill myself, they're going to take it seriously. Parents, if your kids' grades are going down, if they're giving away things, if they're saying, well, I just don't think life is worth living, that is a big red flag. You need to get them help. And again, their family physician may be the best place to start, because they have the ability to give them medication, they have the ability to make referrals, but the mental health center would work with you. Any counselor, look at counselors, social workers. If you go to church, call the minister. And parents, don't worry about embarrassing your child. It's much easier to deal with an embarrassed child than it is with a child that's committed suicide. So don't hesitate. Call anyone you can think of. And as I tell clients when I do the intake evaluation, the only two ways I will divulge information about you is if you tell me you're going to kill yourself or if you tell me you're going to kill someone else. I'll call everyone I can think of. I'll call your parents, I'll call your grandparents, I'll call your minister, I'll call the county sheriff, I'll call anyone I can think of if you tell me you're going to commit suicide. And to some of them, that's a sobering thought, just the fact that they've got to face it.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of it is we see so much happening on TV and other places. People get killed and they come back the next week as a different name, a different character, something else. I don't think they really have thought through the fact that this is permanent. There's no do-overs in suicide. Mm-hmm. And that's a scary thought.
Yeah. Howard, good information. Thank you very much, Dr. Howard Rodgers.